So today's video is going to be about Disney's fifth animated feature film, Bambi, which came out in 1942. Um, Bambi, of course, is a story of a young deer who loses his mother and has to, deal with that, and then grows up and, finds love and everything. And, so we'll be going through some of that along with including different instances, like first of all, the first one that we've come to where Bambi actually has an animated sequel. So I will be talking about that. And yeah, little bits where it entangles with other Disney franchises where he has cameos or if he has any major appearances in anything. So let's get started. So of course with Bambi, at the beginning of it, we are introduced to a bunch of the other animals in the forest, like Thumper and Friend Owl, who is just kind of, Friend Owl is very much the curmudgeon character in the forest. Not that I blame him. Not that I blame him at all, particularly in springtime. So we are introduced to all the animals running through the forest because, like, oh, the new prince is born, the new prince is born. And we are led to a little glen, or a den, depending on certain interactions, where we see this mother deer and her baby. Mother deer is never given a proper name. It's just mother. And new little baby, Bambi. We see all the other animals cooing and fawning over the new baby, and little baby gets up and interacts with Thumper a little bit. And this is where we kind of more get to see Thumper, that he's kind of the little one that's just like, okay, I'm the very curious rabbit. I'm going to go up here and see what's going on. And so that's where we get to meet Thumper, and we get to interact with some of the other little animals that are in the forest. There's lots of different types of birds. There's other rabbits. There's squirrels and chipmunks. So we get to see all of them. And then the next bit is when we get to getting the introduction to a lot more of Bambi and his mother walking through the forest. Seeing all these other animals. There's possums, there's quails, there's, moles, there's, little ducklings all over the, lots of different baby animals and stuff like that to show that, there's new life going on here. It's, spring into summer, very new lifey. Bambi was based on a book that the Walt Disney Company bought. And they had actually been working on Bambi for, I think it ended up being like 8 or 9 years by the time the movie actually was finished and in theaters. And, a stark contrast to that is you look at Bambi and you look at Dumbo that preceded it. And not any bad reflection on Dumbo at all, because Dumbo was not meant to be this realistic type project. Bambi was meant to be done as realistically as possible. And I like how they did that with Dumbo. Dumbo is much more harkening back to like the silly symphonies where you can squish and stretch the animals a lot more. And that's perfectly fine. It was not meant to be, these are real animals. You get some rather good, you get very good emotion out of the animals, and that's kind of more where Dumbo has its stride in that. Not that Bambi is full of different emotions in regards to the animals. But when it comes to Disney, for Bambi, they did lots and lots of research. They had in people who it was their job to do, like animal drawings and animal sketches for, different textbooks and stuff like that. And they brought in real animals into, the studios. They brought in, real baby deer and baby rabbits and everything. And they spent quite a bit of time trying to get everything that they needed to make sure that they could have these animals move as realistically as possible. In comparison, you look at Snow White, 5-6 years earlier, and, the animals are not the centerpiece of that movie. Perfectly fine. The centerpiece of that movie is Snow White. She, how that they can do realistic human action and emotion. Perfectly fine. You get into Bambi, and they very much want to have realistic animals. in their motions, in how they look, and their designs. They want it to be as realistic as possible. And then it shifts just a tiny little bit, like, Bambi, baby deer do not have that large of a head. Different other things. Some animals don't really have those big of eyes for expression, for the expressions that they need to do. Given what they were doing with Bambi, I am perfectly okay with this. So you get to see lots of, real motion out of the animals. You get to see real emotion out of them as well, but real motion, as in, like, this is realistically how this animal would move or how this animal would fly. And I think that that's a very good way of doing it. And then throughout the rest of, the beating sequence, we see, Bambi interacting with Thumper and his sisters again, and him learning how to talk, burr, 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 duh, of course. And, bird, butterfly, flower. And then we, of course, meet the skunk, who is adorable. Thumper and Flower are adorable, and they're very good friends with Bambi, and I love how they make those interactions work. And, we see Friend Owl, of course, again. And then, Bambi and Thumper have a little more fun, and they explore some more, and then, they go back. And the songs in Bambi, the theme, Love is a Song, love is a song that never ends, is kind of the concept of, the circle of life, I guess, kind of a little bit of the thing that predates the circle of life, for Lion King so many years later. All that time later, some of the same themes are still shown in Lion King. And one of the, none of the actual characters, beyond like the, gay little spring song aren't really sung by the actual characters. It's just more like the nature singing around them. So that's where Love is a Song That Never Ends comes from, and then where Little April Showers comes from. And again, them doing studies in how things actually worked, how water actually moved. And, they did all these different, visual tests to try to make sure that they were drawing the water right for how it would move in a rainstorm. So, they have, all these different drop tests where they watch water. And, that's, dedication to skill, dedication to craft, very good on you. And, lots of, they still use a lot of those same different, study cells and animation that they had. They still use that all the way up. They use that through Little Mermaid. They use that through, Mulan, all these other movies where they have, rain or other elements is a big part of the movie. They use some of those same things as, study material for those, reference material. And, that just shows, if it's working, keep going with it, improve on it, but keep going with it. And, so we get the, Little April Showers, where we show how, the rain affects the forest and such. And then we get to where Bambi and his mother go to the meadow. And we get kind of more one of the, we'll start with what else happens in the meadow first. First, we get Bambi running around in the meadow after his mother makes sure that it's safe. After his mother is sure that the meadow is safe. And we watch as, he runs around, he sees Thumper again, they interact. I love Thumper's mother because she always scolds him. She scolds him when he does something he's not supposed to do. She's like, yeah, bratty kid that gets scolded. Good at heart. Thumper has a good heart, but he has a big mouth. And, so it's the whole, we get the whole, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. And, so, we have that for Thumper, and we see him and Bambi interact more. And then we see Bambi meet this other little female deer, Feline. And, she's probably very smitten with him right away. And, so they run around. They kind of play a little bit. Actually, it's her kind of chasing him, and then his mother, of course, forces him to say hello. The way you have to get like a little boy to say hello to a little girl nowadays, or maybe not nowadays, but like at the time, it's like, say hello. Hello. And that's just adorable. And then of course we see all these other male deer running around, all these other bucks, and Bambi is kind of impersonating them as they run around the meadow. And then we see this much bigger deer, these huge antlers come out onto the meadow, and we watch him. We all the other deer stop and watch him, but he stops and looks at Bambi, and then he goes off. And we find out from Bambi's mother that this is the great prince of the forest. He's the one that protects them. He's older than the other deer in the forest. He's the oldest deer in the forest, and it's his job to keep an eye on things. And then the great prince of the forest heads off into the forest, and then he sees that there are hunters in the forest. Man is in the forest, and he runs back to warn all the other deer, and that of course results in the huge chase bit of all of the deer running out of the meadow, Bambi being separated from his mother. The prince finds Bambi, leads him back to the mother, and they all run off. And then there are two moments in this film where the music completely stops. There are no sound effects. There's no music. It is simply the dialogue. And one of those moments is when Bambi asks his mother why they all ran, what happened. And she says, man was in the forest. And and so that's that whole concept of like the music stops, and I think it's for about 18 seconds. It's for a rather good duration of time that it stops, and we just have the dialogue, man was in the forest. And that kind of basically has this instilled in Bambi that, okay, men are dangerous. Man is a dangerous thing. That's basically a yes. Yes, man is a dangerous thing. Men are dangerous. As a species, humans are dangerous. And then we move on from there. We still get, and then, we move on from there for, rest of the story. We see more changes through the seasons. We see into fall. So we get these beautiful leaves swirling in the wind and everything. And we watch more and more of the deer having to forage more and, work their way more for, food for them to eat, of course. And then that shifts into more of winter. And of course, we get the whole Bambi waking up and seeing snow for the first time. Mom, what's all this white stuff? And him, going out and exploring the snow and just this like adorable bits. Bambi is just adorable. Going through the whole thing. At this point, I'm remiss to remember that I forgot to introduce that we have Keldeo over here as the great prince of the forest, and we just have like a stuffed deer, since all my other deer are currently hiding in the garage as Christmas decorations. So those are what you get for deer. We have rabbits back here, but I don't have any skunks. So those are what we get for that. So if any of you were wondering what those were there for, that's why they're there. Keldeo is the closest thing that I have to a deer because I don't have any stuffed deerling or stantler or sawsbuck. So those are what we get. But so we move into winter, of course, as I said, and we watch Bambi explore through the snow, and then we watch him and Thumper ice skate, which is adorable. Let's make a deer ice skate. The deer has more confidence on ice than I do. Yeah. The rabbit's better at skating than me too, but I'm not a skater. Um, so you watch all that, and we see them interact with Flower, who's hibernating, and that's just adorable. A few things that tend to be pretty close to actually how animals tend to work from season to season. And then we get to where more harsh winter, more stuff with the deer having to scavenge for food and everything. And then of course we get to one of the emotional crux of the movie. Bambi and his mother go out one morning, and she finds some new spring grass for him to eat, and then she hears something, senses something, and a hunter comes. And Bambi and his mother tells Bambi to keep running and running and running until he gets back home. And we watch Bambi run, we watch his mother run, and then we just keep watching Bambi, and then we hear the gunshot. And then Bambi made it safely back to the den, but his mother didn't. Of course, anyone that's watched Bambi is well aware of this. And some side notes on this part. In some of the original adaptations of the film, when they were working on those scenes, they had been interested in having it be that you actually see the mother's body. And see the hunter taking the mother's body away. But they didn't do that. Obviously they didn't do that, or otherwise that would still be in the film. But we are just left with kind of Bambi's perspective, where it's him running off to try to, kind of backtracking to try to find his mother, calling and calling and calling. And it starts to snow, and the snow gets heavier and heavier. And then the great prince of the forest shows up. And at this point, we kind of figure out that it's Bambi's father. If that wasn't already evident in the film, this is kind of what makes it very much evident. And we get silence again. Second moment in the film where we get just, this 18 seconds of silence or so. And, the great prince of the forest tells Bambi that he can't see his mother. She can't be with you anymore. And we see Bambi, shed this one little tear. And then Bambi goes off with the great prince of the forest, with his father. And this is where the sequel takes over. I will talk about the sequel after I finish actually talking about the original movie. But this is where the sequel would take place, and then we'll move on. But we'll talk about that after I finish up with this part, with the rest of the actual original movie. And when we get to, then the next transition is it transitions into spring, and it's supposed to be a little bit later. It's not obviously the next spring, but it's, a year later or 2 years. I think it's a year later. I don't remember exactly how. Phone. I don't remember exactly how fast deer mature. But we get the transition into the Gay Little Spring Song, where we see the all the birds fluttering about, and everybody's Twitter-pated, as Owl puts it. And we just get this great image of Owl just horrified out of his mind at the concept of, oh God, it's spring again. Why? Help. And it's just Owl, you have my sympathy. You do. And then, Bambi shows up, and Thumper and Flower show up, and they're asking, well, what's going on around here? What's with everybody? And And friend Owl explains that everybody's Twitter page. It happens in the spring. Could happen to anyone. Could happen to you. And you. Or even you. Points at Flower. Skunk. And, he explains, it's like, feels like you're walking on air. It's just like all this explanation of like what Twitter page it is. And then like all three of the boys are just like, well, that ain't gonna happen to me. I ain't gonna let that happen. Nope. And they all march off. And then, one by one, we watch them. We watch this little, female skunk just basically, bring Flower in, and, he kisses him, and then he turns red and stiff as a board, and then he's just like, the others look back at him, and he's just like, goes off with the female skunk. And then we see Thumper get hooked by this, this pretty little female rabbit who, she kisses him, or like they bump noses, and he's just like, with his foot thumping all the way. He's just like, like melts. What happened to you? Well, I melted the rabbit. What'd you do? I kissed him. Okay, he's yours now. And of course we get that, and we see Bambi look back and see just like Thumper just laying in the lap of this little rabbit, and she's just like petting his ear or whatever. And then Bambi's just like, he's still very determined not to get Twitter paid. And then, the same way that he meets Feline in the, at the beginning of the movie when they first meet, he's taking a drink out of the, he's playing in the water in the little pond, and then she pops up, and then he sees her, and he's just like bewildered by her, and she's just like, you don't remember me, do you, Bambi? And she just like, he like backs up, and like she just like backs him up from, just like, kind of like traps him in a corner type thing, and just like kisses him, and then he just like, like in the whole melting type thing. And then we get, the whole walking over, we get them like jumping through the clouds and being happy and everything. And then this other deer shows up, this other male deer shows up and like snaps him out of it. And Bambi has to, fight this deer, fight the male deer for Feline. Very common thing with fair amount of time, male deer have to fight another male for the female deer. The deer's name is Rano. Rano. And they battle, and Bambi wins, and then, Feline and Bambi, of course, are together, and then we get them running around, seeing, them running around at night and seeing all these, pretty fireflies and stars and everything, looking for romance, song plays, and it's just them being very happy and running around, and everything's peaceful, and then man returns, and they're hunting, and they send their dogs into the forest, and the dogs chase Feline, and the dogs chase Feline around the forest, and get her trapped up on rocks, and Bambi shows up and he saves her, and then so then he, they're running and escaping, and then we hear a gunshot, and we see Bambi fall. My question was okay, so did he actually like get shot in like the leg or something, and that's why it's hard for him to get up? Or is he just still in so much shock, and he just kind of hurt himself when he fell from, jumping and getting hit and falling? I just, I'm not 100% sure on that. That I don't remember if that's 100% what happens or not. But Bambi's father shows up, and he, gets Bambi to stand up. You can't, get up, get up, get up. Not like the desperate, just like the whole you have to get up type thing. It's like, I'm not going to help you. You have to get up on your own. And then we watch, Bambi and all the other forest animals are fleeing, of course, because the fire happens. Man's fire rushes its way into the forest, and starts to burn everything. Yeah. And, you know, we watch Bambi and his father escape, and then, you know, he gets reunited with Feline, and then it cuts to, you know, the forest grows back because, you know, after forest fires, you know, the forest does grow back. You know, not the same way that it was, but it still grows back. And Bambi is now, you know, ruling the forest alongside his father, and Feline had two little babies. Um, they have names. I forgot to write them down. I think Guri and Gumo, something like that. I'll put the names up here along with their picture. Don't remember off the top of my head what they are, but they have a son and a daughter. And Bambi is watching over everything, and we see that Thumper has had his own, you know, little, you know, baby rabbits, and Flower had his own baby skunk, who he called Bambi. Okay, sure. Yes, let's name the skunk Bambi after your best friend. But okay, yeah, I guess it's like the concept of, well, let's name the kid after my best friend. You know, that's what you want to do. And you know, and from there is when, you know, we see all of the animals, you know, all happy, and everything in the forest is at peace again. This is where we enter the territory of the sequel, the animated sequel, Bambi 2. This one came out in 2006, so, you know, quite a while, but, you know, quite a bit later. And we see, basically takes place right after the time when Bambi went off with his father after his mother was killed. And so it's right after the whole, you know, she can't be with you anymore. And, you know, my opinion, they did a very good job in recasting everything. In the original Bambi, you know, Thumper and Flower and Bambi were all voiced by real kids. Guy that voiced Bambi grew up to become a Marine, and hid the fact that he was Bambi while he was in the Marines, which I don't blame him in the slightest. You know, nowadays it might get you some cred, but it's probably not so much, you know, at that point in time, unfortunately. Probably not that much then. But since then, he's, you know, come out and claimed that, yeah, I was Bambi. I was Bambi when I was a kid. But, you know, they had real kids voice all the different, you know, the little young animals. And in the sequel, they brought in real kids to play the characters again, which, again, I think is a very good idea. If you have the ability to do that, I say go for it. And a side note on the girl that voiced Feline when she was a child, Feline, she's a fawn. That is the same little girl that plays the daughter of Scarlett and Rhett Butler in, you know, Gone with the Wind. I know there's a lot of controversy around Gone with the Wind, so I'm not showing anything from it, but she's the same little girl. And I think those were like the only two, I think she said at some point those were like the only two movies she ever did, and what were the odds that, you know, the two movies she does, both of them are classics. But, you know, we move into, as I said, we move into the sequel, and one of the things that they did with the sequel was they finally really gave the Great Prince of the Forest a bit more to do. Then, he, you know, shows up, takes Bambi off, and then he shows up again and, you know, gets Bambi up after he, you know, falls and is either shot or in shock or something. And we kind of watch Bambi get to deal with what happened to him. And we see, you know, the Great Prince of the Forest is voiced by Patrick Stewart, which I'm like, yes, sure, yes, I'm perfectly okay with this. But, you know, Bambi's father finds him, of course, and takes him off, and we watch as the prince, the Great Prince of the Forest, who is, you know, he's not very good with kids because, you know, it wasn't his job to have to take care of Bambi. It was his, you know, his mother's job. And he doesn't really know how to deal with kids. And we have to watch through the course of the movie as he slowly has to come to terms with the fact that, okay, maybe this is something I can do. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of a concept on like, well, he's kind of a single father at this point in time. But he does ask friend Owl to see if he can find a doe that can help raise Bambi, that Bambi can go and live with, so that way he's better taken care of. And we watch through the movie as we see Bambi interact with Feline and Flower and Thumper again, and we see him interact with a young buck, very young, a little bit older than Bambi, his future rival Ronno, who causes so many problems for Bambi and Feline and Thumper and Flower and the other little animals in the forest, because he's very headstrong and full of himself. It's a very good way of putting out Ronno, of explaining Ronno. And so that, just kind of presents, later on the future conflict. And we watch as spring comes into play into the movie, as winter turns into spring. And admittedly, we have another beautiful soundtrack in this movie. There's like songs on here by Alison Krauss. There's a few other ones, and I'll list off some of the songs at the end. But we watch these different sequences of the forest, the snow melting and the ice thawing and everything turning into spring. And we watch as Bambi tries to figure out ways to how to impress his father, because he wants to do that. He's like, okay, well, my father's the great prince of the forest, so I at least have to do something to prove that maybe we can get along. And he tries and tries, and unfortunately, one of those things that happens is we get two scenes that kind of show him dealing with his past. One of them is we see him having a dream, and it's him interacting with his mother in the dream, and she saying, I love you, and you have to be strong and everything, and that type of stuff. And then the other instance that we get is when man returns to the forest, or is still into the forest, and the dogs chase Bambi, and he just freezes from what happened, and he's kind of trapped in the meadow again, and he rightfully so, he freezes. It's the last time that he heard these noises, it cost him his mother, and you can't blame the kid. And we watch him freeze as he's getting attacked by these dogs, and his father shows up and saves him, and then snaps him out of it, and then they run. And we watch as Bambi slowly builds a better relationship with his father. We see Bambi practicing lots of jumping and stuff like that, because it was like he jumped at some point, and his father saw how far he jumped, and he was impressed by that. And so Bambi's like, well, if I can keep jumping, and if I can keep showing him what I can do, then maybe that'll make him spend more time with me. And Bambi learns how to listen to the forest the way that his father does, and wants to help with everything. And we watch them have fun and play, and it's just these great little sequences that are just very good. Like the first movie is Bambi bonding with his mother and everything, which is just there because she was always there. And then the second movie is him bonding with his father, and we work our way through that, and from there we see that friend Owl, Bambi's father never told him that he was trying to find a doe that could take Bambi. And when friend Owl shows up with this other deer that's supposed to take Bambi and keep raise him and everything better than Bambi's father can, and because she has more experience with raising fawns. And Bambi doesn't like this because he thinks that it means that his father doesn't want him, because his father never told friends about, oh, you can stop looking for a doe. So it's that conflict thing that happens, and Bambi runs off, and the mother, Bambi and his father end up having to have this talk. It was like, I brought her, I'd asked for her because I didn't know if I could take care of you, type of a thing. And I mean, it's an honest thing to ask, because, you know, he's not someone that's meant to, he's not a deer that's meant to help raise a baby. And he's learned that, no, I can, but it'd also make Bambi safer if he's with this doe. And Bambi does decide to go off with the doe, hugs his father, you know, deer version of a hug, nuzzles his father one more time, and they go off. And what happens is Bambi, you know, the female deer that's the doe, unfortunately gets her hoof caught in a trap, just like a string hook trap or something like that. Nothing that's actually going to cause her pain, but it pins her so she can't run. And of course, that triggers the alarm. And Bambi panics for a moment, and Rano was there teasing him, and he panics and freezes and doesn't know what to do, and he just runs off after a second. And Rano runs off after a second, just crying for his mama because the dogs are coming. And Bambi is frozen, scared for a second, and then he snaps out of it, and he's like, okay, well, I couldn't protect my own mother, but I can protect this other doe. And he, you know, gets the dog's attention, and he leads them away from her, and we watch him get chased by the dogs, very similar to how Feline gets chased in the original movie. We watch Bambi get chased by these other dogs, and you know, gets chased up a cliff, and he, you know, knocks down a rock to, you know, land on the dogs to scare them off, so that way they'll leave him alone. And unfortunately, Bambi falls in this as well. And, you know, the great prince of the forest and the other animals, of course, see this, see how brave Bambi is being, and you know, he frees the other doe, so she's fine. And what happens is, you know, Bambi kind of falls, and they think that Bambi's dead. And, you know, a little bit of How to Train Your Dragons reference in here for the end of the movie, where it's, you know, Bambi's father goes over and just, you know, nuzzles him and kind of cuddles into him, because it's like, he, you know, he thinks for a moment that he lost his son. I mean, we know as an audience, well, clearly it's a sequel, and, you know, Bambi can't be dead because he's got all this other stuff he has to do, so he's not dead. But in the moment, you know, the great prince of the forest and the other animals don't know that. And, you know, Bambi, you know, becomes conscious again, and he's very happy to have his father back. And, you know, Bambi's going to stay with his father at this point. And, you know, and then we kind of cut to, I'm assuming it's supposed to be just like a couple of months later or something. I don't remember exactly, but Bambi has, again, I don't know how long it takes deer to mature. Bambi has grown up a little bit more. He's starting to get his antlers, and his spots are gone. And we get this adorable bit where it's, you know, I don't remember if it's Thumper and Flower do this or what, but somehow him and Feline both trip, and then they kiss. And, yeah, Bambi just goes, I think Bambi just kind of turns red and, like, runs off, because he has to go spend time with his dad now. After spending time with his friends, he has to go spend time with his dad. And his dad takes him to a little, you know, glen forest area that's very pretty. And he explains to Bambi that this is where I met your mother. And we see that their relationship has, again, gotten better. Addendum to the whole kiss thing. There's a porcupine throughout the movie that's just as like this little antagonistic character that Bambi has to deal with, and the porcupine gets Bambi gets pricked by the porcupine, and that causes him to kiss Feline, because he like jumps and then they kiss, and that was what it was. I couldn't remember what it was, but that's what it was. And they go off, and, you know, his first met, you know, his father shows him where he first met his mother when they were children. And, you know, throughout the course of the movie, they use this very beautiful soundtrack. There is Life, sung by Alison Krauss. First Sign of Spring, by Mitchell Lewis. Through Your Eyes, by Martina McBride. And there is another one, Healing of a Heart, but I do not remember who sings that one. And the quote that I'm going to use at the end of this video is actually from one of those songs. The soundtrack is very good, you know, even if you're not super familiar with the movie, you know, even if you may not necessarily like the movie itself, the soundtrack for the sequel, the soundtrack for the sequel is very good. So we get to see that. And regards to Bambi and like other media, a couple of cameo appearances here in House of Mouse with like Thumper and Flower are there as well. They're mostly just him as a little kid, Bambi as the fawn. I don't remember if the older Bambi ever pops up in House of Mouse. Bambi was in, I think, a couple of like hunting PSAs over the years for Disney, along with some different like nature awareness, when it comes to, keeping nature clean and everything. He's in a couple of those types of PSAs, of course. And then in Kingdom Hearts, Bambi is a summon. He's in Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. He's just a summon that you get after you complete a certain task for the 100 Acre Woods segment, where you deal with Winnie the Pooh and all of them in the 100 Acre Woods, which again in and of itself is just an adorable thing that you do for that. But you get Bambi, and he's just a summon, and you summon him, and he kind of dashes around as his fawn form, runs around, and what happens is, he just like dashes around and drops, like potions and stuff like that, so you can like pick them up. And I think at some point, like if you do a certain thing with Bambi, you build him up enough, or you get him strong enough or whatever, that you then get like a special type of potion that gets dropped or something. I never really cared that much to use Bambi as a summon. I more tended to use like, a Mushu or Genie or Simba or that type of stuff for different summons that I would use for Kingdom Hearts. Bambi doesn't really have any appearance in Once Upon a Time. The only thing that I can think of for why there would be an appearance at all in Once Upon a Time would be like if there was like a side joke someone made about, a deer or something, or a rabbit or whatever. So there's not really anything in Once Upon a Time for Bambi, which I guess makes this video slightly shorter. Because I don't have to deal with the intricacies of like, well, you see, Bambi was human, got turned into a deer, or now there's talking animals in Once Upon a Time. One thing to say about Once Upon a Time, I don't remember them doing the talking animals thing. That was not an animal that was like cursed as a human. Like Jiminy Cricket was cursed as a human, or was changed as a human and turned into a cricket. I don't remember the animals talking beyond like the dragon, or like animals that was like, okay, I'll buy that the dragon can talk, or the animal is like an animal that turns into a human. Okay, I'll buy that thing talking. But other than that, I don't remember the animals talking in Once Upon a Time, which is like, okay, at least we didn't have to deal with that. If I'm wrong, post something about I was wrong. There are talking animals in Once Upon a Time, but I don't remember them. I don't remember the talking animals. So no Bambi in Once Upon a Time. Cameos in House of Mouse, stuff about hunting PSAs, or nature PSAs for the most part, not necessarily hunting PSAs, but like nature and pollution PSAs to kind of help people stop doing that, or at least become more aware of what happens. So that's what we do. We see Bambi is at the Disney parks at times, mostly as different statues. That's about all I can remember when it comes from Bambi and stuff for what he's been in. There are like maybe even like Bambi cameos and like other shows from Disney as far as I'm aware, but that's about what I have for Bambi. Love the original movie. I very much like the sequel. Love the soundtracks on both of them. So that's what we have for Bambi. So I thank you very much. I thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. The colder the winter, the warmer the spring, the deeper the sorrow, the more our hearts sing.